Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply. This episode is brought to you by Seed's DSO1 Daily Synbiotic, a 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic formulated with 24 clinically and scientifically studied strains to support healthy regularity and your gut, immune, and skin health. Optimize your gut health. Visit seed.com/Spotify with code Spotify for 30% off your first month of Seed's DSO1 Daily Synbiotic. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hello and welcome to a new podcast, The Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello everyone. On this week's podcast, I'm looking back at the 100 with the Trent Rockets Operations Manager, Mick Newell, with a few insights from another rocker, Steven Mullaney. Welcome back to the Paddock and the Pavilion, Mick.
Steve, nice to see you again. All good?
Well, thank you. So, talking about the 100, what are your initial thoughts on the competition?
Well, from where I was, on the inside, if you like, I thought it was fantastic. It was great fun. It was obviously successful in terms of numbers of people both watching on TV and watching in the grounds. I felt like the standard of cricket was high, and it was great to see the double headers that took place every match. And I think that the women's game will get a huge boost from it. So, as I say, from where I was operating and working from, I really enjoyed it.
And how did it go for the Trent Rockets? I know the men's team came third and the women's team came seventh, but they weren't very far away from getting into the eliminators. No,
they weren't, and I think they lost both the last two games, and had they won either one of those two games, they would have got through, which is doubly frustrating, particularly the game against Birmingham Phoenix at Trent Bridge, which we dominated for the most part. So a little bit disappointing for them, but my main recollection for the girls is what a great experience it was. Got to play at Lord's, got to play 4 times at Trent Bridge, playing in front of crowds that they can only have dreamed of, really, in recent times. So I think from their perspective, lots to learn, lots of improvements to make, and hopefully we can, rebuild that side. I think from the men's perspective, I just wanted to get one of our teams to that sort of finals weekend. I didn't care which one, because I think three men's teams, 3 women's teams. So I was delighted that we got that far, and then not. A little disappointed, I suppose, that we lost to Southern Brave in the way we did, because it was a low-scoring game. But they had an outstanding bowling attack, and on a wicket that was definitely suited their seamers more than our spinners. I think we were up against it from the minute that we saw the pitch 24 hours before the game.
Yeah, because when you played the Southern Brave in I think your second game, or first game, I think, at Trent Bridge, which I went to see myself, you beat the Southern Brave by 9 wickets. Yeah,
we did, and I think Marchant de Lange had a great day. Rashid Khan got wickets. I think it was a Trent Bridge drier pitch, more suited to our sort of pace-off bowlers like Rashid Khan, like Steven Mullaney. Joe Root played that game. Samit Patel bowled in that game. So we had a lot of spin there. And by the time we got to the Oval, we didn't have huge amounts of pace options because Lewis Gregory wasn't bowling by then. So I think it was a tough game for us to play them on a pitch that suited quick bowling, and then to see Jordan, Garton, Mills and Overton was a pretty big ask for us, given that we didn't have much to fight back with.
And going back to the standard, what do you think to the overall standard of the cricket?
Yeah, look, I think it was really good. The men's cricket, I think, was excellent. I think the quality of players that was playing in it, took T20 cricket, if you like, at county level to a higher plane. I think there was some outstanding fielding in particular, some very, very good quick bowling, lots of spin on display. Perhaps the batting in our games was a little bit under par. We didn't play in hugely high scoring matches, which is something we need to think about next year. If we're going to play perhaps in more higher scoring games, do we need to be a bit more dynamic with the bat? But I thought the standard was very high, and I think in the women's game the standard will only continue to improve. The more opportunities we give to female cricketers to play at this level on test match grounds against good players, I think that game is going to fly and the standard will improve quickly.
Yeah, in the men's competition, we saw a score of over 200, and looking at the the run aggregate, Liam Livingston scored, I think, more than 100 runs, more than anyone else. So he was really outstanding.
He was outstanding, and I think he struck the ball quite brilliantly. So, yeah, I think some players obviously enhance their reputations. Liam's had a brilliant summer and has come out at the end of the summer with his reputation flying and a place in England's World Cup T20 squad. As I say, I think in most of our games the scores were, lower, 125 to 155 probably. We didn't play in many really high-scoring games, and I think that's, as I say, you've got to structure your team perhaps in a way that can enable you to set bigger totals or chase bigger scores. And
like you said, the pace bowling was exciting with Marchant, Delang, Adam Milne and Tymel Mills all excelling really.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about the comp. I'd never really worked with Marchant Delang before. He was an exceptional bloke, and he could bowl at 90 miles an hour. So, in addition to Milne and Milnes, like you say, and Garton, who emerged from the Southern Brave with a hugely enhanced reputation, I think there was some very high quality cricket played. It was very intense. It was highly intense. I think that's why there were a lot of injuries. People picked up niggles and came. We lost players in the tournament due to injury. So I think that the overall quality was great, and I think that it will only attract better players in the future. A lot of overseas players didn't come this year because of COVID. I think they'll be clamouring to get in next year.
Let's hear what Trent Rockets all-rounder Steve Mullaney thought about the 100. What was it like playing in the 100, and did you find it much different to T20?
I've been asked that question quite a lot of times, actually. Firstly, to play in it was absolutely amazing. I've never been fortunate enough to play international cricket, but speaking to a few of the lads who was in my team, so the likes of Hales, Samit, Rashid Khan, Marchant, they were saying that it's as close to international atmosphere as they've ever played in any franchise around the world. So I remember the full house at the Oval was like you couldn't hear anything. Like you couldn't hear. I meant your own players. You could hear obviously the crowd. But yeah, the noise was phenomenal. And the best bit for me was that Trent Bridge really got behind us from the first game as Trent Rockets. So that was one massive thing for me, that the town of Nottingham and Trent Bridge got behind the Trent Rockets. And hopefully that can continue in the coming years. But I didn't really find it much different to T20, obviously slightly tactically different. But I think when we were in chase, I was trying to work out runs per over from 6 balls rather than 5. So not too much different, but obviously slightly different tactics every now and then.
So do you think the sort of added pressure in a small, short form sort of event with more international players will help people like yourself and other county players when those situations arise again?
Yeah, I don't think it can make you any worse prepared for it, that is for sure. I think, with what's gone on, obviously there's some availability issues with some of the massive names, so Andre Russell, etc. We were lucky that we got Rashid. So hopefully the massive names are available again next season in it. You obviously want to test yourself against the best. But I think it's definitely got England on the map with a franchise tournament. I've had messages from friends all around the world saying how good they loved it. I've had people stop me at school when I've been dropping my kids off saying they're getting season tickets next year, how much they've enjoyed it. So I think it's been a real positive. I can't see really any negatives to it. But yeah, it was a massive tournament to be involved, especially the inaugural one. It was a real privilege and honour to play in it. I really loved it. I can only speak from a personal point of view. It was a little bit different, but when you actually got out there, the nuts and bolts of it were that it was a game of cricket against a bat and ball, and it was 20 balls less. So I think it was a fantastic tournament. I know that the overseas players loved it, and I definitely know that the domestic players loved it. So I'd welcome it back with open arms.
And did you like some of the family atmosphere that you were getting at games as well?
Yeah, my kids actually. I can only go off what my kids love. So they had the Rocket shirts. They came to the Oval for the semi-final. We had a weekend in London. They came to a game at Trent Bridge. They couldn't come to the first one, and then obviously had to isolate, so they didn't go to them. But the amount of kids there buying merchandise, seeing it around, even now at Notts games, there's still merchandise. And I actually watched a bit of the England women's game last night, and people in the crowd there had 100 merchandise on. So it's obviously gone well around the country, and long may that continue.
We return to Mick to hear how the 100 has boosted the women's game. And on the women's front at Trent Rockets, Sammy Jo Johnson, who I also interviewed on this podcast, she showed her all-round skills with bat and ball.
Yeah, and she was a great character as well. I think we were very lucky to have her in Nottingham. She was one of the first to arrive, and I think she's about the last to leave because I gather she's still in quarantine in Australia now, which is tough for her. So she's had a great opportunity. I know she really enjoyed being an overseas player, being a sort of an icon player, if you like, within a team where the overseas players are looked up to and expected to put in big performances. And she did, and she whacked the ball around 2 or 3 games. She took vital wickets. And she was a great addition to our squad. And I think as I say, it's not for me to pick the squads for next year, but I'm sure she's under consideration for a return to Nottingham.
And you mentioned about a boost to women's cricket. It must really put them on the map and have role models for other young players, like we've seen with Alice Capsey, only 17, playing in London.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. I mean, when we started our games at Trent Bridge, there were probably already 5,000 or 6,000 in at the beginning. And by the end of the girls' game, there would be 8,000 or 9,000. So that opportunity for them to be seen in that environment on a test match ground, I think is great for the exposure for the game. And I know of a lot of people who haven't really expressed much interest in cricket before. This has grabbed them. This is a starting point for people to get involved in the game, whether that's boys, girls, or adults as well, So I think we have to grab that. We have to make sure the girls are encouraged to maintain the standards that they're setting, to keep playing at the highest possible level, and hopefully create more opportunities for young English girls like Capsey to play at that level next year.
Yeah, I read that 20% of the ticket sales were women ticket holders. Were you pleased with the crowds at Trent Bridge?
We were very pleased with the 4 home crowds that we got. Absolutely, we were. We were delighted with them, because we weren't sure what was going to happen pre the tournament because we weren't in charge of the ticketing. ECB was selling the tickets, so we didn't know who was going to come, how that was going to go. I think there was a mass release after a year and a half of lockdown, which I think helped us all to generate bigger crowds than perhaps we might have thought of. It created 1 or 2 issues around antisocial behaviour and drinking and stuff like that. But all the grounds will have learnt a lot about how we can take this competition forward and encourage crowds and people to come back.
Yeah, Steve said he loved seeing people at Nottingham with their Trent Rockets merchandise on, even at other games, he said.
Yeah, and we sold more Trent Rockets stuff than we sold not stuff. I mean, it was amazing, really. So, it's hugely encouraging to see Trent Rockets caps and shirts and hoodies and all that sort of thing. So I think there's no doubt that they pitched it well with the sort of kits and the colours and things like that. And it has really taken off in that area.
And on that point, on a negative point, but some people have been saying that this could be the demise of county cricket. How do you respond to people who say that?
Well, look, if 20,000 people watching a cricket match is a bad thing, then I'm not quite sure what they mean, because we have to get people interested in cricket. Okay, we have to not to be too parochial about county cricket or whatever it might be. If we want county cricket to survive, county cricket can't survive with the sort of numbers of people who come and watch county cricket. So we have to find competitions and play games of cricket that people do want to watch to keep all of the formats of the game going and strong. And I think the 100 was a great addition to that. We're not in the business of trying to say that county should go out of business, but if we're going to keep them all going, we need to generate more money and more interest in cricket as a whole.
And you can see from all sports, they're all trying to innovate to get a wider audience. And cricket's only doing what other sports are doing.
Yeah, and I think, the T20, it is so different when it came in to other sports. Ice hockey, I know, have tried shorter games. The rugby are trying less players on the pitch, things like that. Snooker might try, 1 frame, things like that. So, we're all trying to get new people to watch our sport, watch our game, and that's really encouraging. We need to do that, and I think the 100, it's slightly different to T20. It's not hugely different. There's a couple of tweaks that come in that I quite like, but it's not a huge alteration on T20 cricket, and it will generate the interest, and it certainly grabbed people's attention this year.
And what did you think to the effect of the 100 on the Royal London Cup competition?
Well, ultimately, yeah, look, it had a big effect. We at one point, Notts were 14 players short for the Royal London. We had players in the 100, we had injured players, and we had players playing for England and that sense. So, look, we were 14 players down, but the development of some of our younger players was definitely rapidly enhanced by playing in the Royal London 50. And, two teams, Durham and Glamorgan, who weren't hugely affected by numbers going into the 100, they got to the final. So I think that's great for them. I think it's going to be a difficult balancing act, fitting all the cricket that we've got into our congested season.
So do you think there could be changes to the schedule next year, but still keeping the 100 during the 6 weeks holiday, school holiday?
Yeah, I don't think there's huge changes. I think it's been publicised that the final of the Blast is going to be played before the 100 starts, which is probably a better way of doing it. Finish that competition, then start a fresh competition is definitely the best way of doing it. But I don't see huge changes, because unless we're going to find an extra month, unless we're going to be able to play through March or through October, we are still going to be trying to congest an awful lot of cricket into quite a small period of time.
And as a former England selector, do you worry about the 100 having an effect on the England Test side?
No, I don't really. I mean, I understand that, some of the arguments around people not being fully prepared when they came into the Test match, but, players are pretty adaptable these days. Moeen came in on the back of the 100. Haseeb Hameed came in on the back of some 50-over cricket and some large holes in his season with a lack of 4-day cricket. People just got to get on with it. You can't blame the 100 when England lose and not credit the 100 when England win. So, it's too easy just saying England lost the Test match because of the 100. It's got to work both ways.
Now back to Steve for more of his cricketing thoughts. And on a positive side, the Royal London Cup gave opportunities to players that wouldn't have played if you hadn't had the 100.
Absolutely, and to see, I watched a bit of it with the final, Glamorgan winning it. Got a couple of friends, Billy Root and Dave Harrison, in the Glamorgan camp. So to see them lift the trophy was really good. But as you said, the players did get opportunities. So for us, I think we had in our first game 9 or 10 debutants. So it was really good for us, and we competed. So I think we came 4th and 3 qualified. So. Look, I think that's a massive positive, that you're going to see people play under pressure, whether it be in the 100 or stepping up to 50-over cricket, and that can only be good for the game and producing players for our country.
And moving forward to 2022 in the 100, is there going to be another draft?
We haven't really had much contact from ECB since it's finished, to be fair to them. I think they're probably going to lie down, the amount of work they put in. But I would expect there to be some kind of draft, but also some retention of players to their original team if that team and the player agree and they want to be retained.
Yeah, because as a spectator myself, I think it's nice to have some form of retention so you get familiar with players playing for a certain team.
Yeah, I think there'll be some of that. I think originally when this was launched or going to be launched in 2020, I was aware that we might be retaining up to 10 players out of 15, but you don't have to retain any if you don't want to. I think that will be part of the coaching staff's job, will be to recommend who they want to retain, and then we'll decide, we'll then try and negotiate with players to see if they want to stay. They may take a chance of going back in a draft thinking they'll get more money. So that's very much a two-way decision between player and club.
And do you think they'll stick to the same format with 8 matches and the same sort of rules?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, we stumbled across these double headers. Again, that wasn't in the original script for 2020, but, due to COVID and due to the need just to use 8 grounds rather than use other county grounds or out grounds for some of the girls' games, I think we've stumbled across something here that definitely works. And I think the idea of double headers in my opinion, should be here to stay.
Yeah, we might even see that at international level at some point again. I think they get more crowds now than they did when it happened before.
Yeah, look, I think the idea of because I think the girls' game has improved so much. I think you're right, and I think the idea of an international doubleheader, I'm sure could feature somewhere online to give the girls the opportunity to play on the bigger grounds, because their international games are still taking place at places like Taunton and Hove and Leicester, which is great. It's fantastic, especially at the grounds that they then filled 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. But if you could imagine them playing at Lord's in front of 25,000 to 30,000, followed by a men's game, I mean, that's a huge step up, and something I'm sure that we'll be keen to, those in charge of women's cricket will be keen to explore.
Well, at the final, you had 17,000 there for the women's game, which is a massive boost to women's cricket.
Yeah, and it's a great thing. I say when Trent Rockets played at Lord's, a lot of our girls had never even been to Lord's, never mind played at Lord's. So they got the opportunity to train there, to play there, to win there, and then to celebrate there. So I think it's a great experience, and one of the best days of the summer for me was watching us, us as in Trent Rockets, have that double header winner at London Spirit.
And COVID permitting, we should have some more international players playing in next year's 100?
Yeah, I think as I say earlier, I think the international players who didn't come will have looked at that tournament on TV and think, I want a piece of that. So I'd be very surprised if we didn't get another level of international cricketers. Steve Smith, Mitchell Stark, these sort of people, Warner, Andre Russell. I'm pretty sure that they will want to be involved next year if the international schedules allow.
Well, thank you very much for those thoughts on this year's 100 and looking forward to 2022. Will you still be involved yourself next year?
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I think I will. I mean, Trent Bridge will retain its status as a venue for the 100 as long as it's there, and I am still in the job with Notts. Yeah, I think the two things still go together.
Good. Well, thank you very much again for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion.
Pleasure, Steve. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Paddock and the Pavilion. You can download the show on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Spotify. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Pad and Pav.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.